Former President Donald Trump and Vice President Harris finally debated. And I have to say, I did not expect it to go down like that. As a matter of fact, I did not think that former President Donald Trump was going to perform that terribly. That magic that former President Donald Trump had back in 2016, I did not see that in this debate. Back then, it was all about the people that, he's taking down the corrupt system. And now it's all about immigrants. Literally, that was like every single time they would bring up a topic, it was just immigrants, immigrants, immigrants. Ukraine versus Russia, immigrants. Crime rate, immigrants. The economy, immigrants. It's immigrants. Like that. That's the only answer he had. It's almost as if like that's the only thing he wanted to talk about. Even to the point where he was just spreading misinformation.
Just to go into another subject, what they have done to our country by allowing these millions and millions of people to come into our country, and look at what's happening to the towns all over the United States. And a lot of towns don't want to talk. It's not going to be Aurora or Springfield. A lot of towns don't want to talk about it because they're so embarrassed by it. In Springfield, they're eating the dogs, the people that came in. They're eating the cats. They're eating the pets of the people that live there.
If former President Donald Trump went fishing, he will make it sound like he's taking down Moby Dick. When I first heard that, I was thinking to myself, like, this can't possibly be true. Now, I will say this, okay? Any information that comes from former President Donald Trump, I immediately associate that with sophistry and misinformation. Mainly because he's developed this reputation for spreading misinformation. If he could, he would use misinformation as a spread on his sandwich. Now, even though he's developed this reputation, it's another thing when you get fact-checked and peer-reviewed on national TV.
I just want to clarify here, you bring up Springfield, Ohio, and ABC News did reach out to the city manager there. He told us there have been no credible reports of specific claims of pets being harmed, injured, or abused by individuals within the immigrant community.
Now, I know that there's going to be some people that are going to say, oh, well, this is fake news. How can we trust them? Listen, man, like, you get your information from news sources like this. Even if you get your information from alternative media, such as YouTuber pundits, like political pundits, they still get their information from news outlets like this anyways. Because political commentators, they don't go out of their way to go search for this information. They don't go out into the field. These news outlets, they go out into the field, and of course the political commentators, they pick that information up and then they read it to you guys and give you an opinion. And even knowing that, it doesn't even matter because Donald Trump could just say, oh, well, I saw the videos, and people will still believe that. Kind of like what he did in the debate.
Well, I've seen people on television.
Let me just say here, this is
the people on television say my dog was taken and used for food. So maybe he said that, and maybe that's a good thing to say for a city manager.
I'm not taking this from
television.
television.
But the people on television saying their dog was eaten by the people that went there.
Again, the Springfield city manager says there's no evidence of that. Vice President Harris, I'll let you respond to the rest of what you've heard.
Now, I do want to go ahead and just give this tad bit of information because people are probably going to be like, oh, well, the manager doesn't know anything. Like, who is he? Like, it's not like he was there. Well, believe it or not, law enforcement has a connection with the city manager. As a matter of fact, law enforcement is supposed to report to the city manager. So if there's currently no available information about that particular situation, then unfortunately there is no evidence at the moment. But going back to the optics, that definitely doesn't look good, man. Especially because more than 50% of people trust or somewhat trust news outlets like ABC News. That doesn't look good for Donald Trump at all. Another optically terrible hindrance that affected Donald Trump's performance was Donald Trump's to-do list. Kamala Harris had this list of things that Donald Trump would do, and he exacted every single behavior to a T, proving her point.
But I'm going to tell you all in this debate tonight, you're going to hear from the same old tired playbook, a bunch of lies, grievances, and name-calling.
She said that you're going to hear lies, grievances, and name-calling. Well, the lie was that, immigrants are eating pets. The grievances is that the election was stolen from him. And of course, the name calling, he called Joe Biden a weak, pathetic man.
But when this weak, pathetic man that you saw at a debate just a few months ago, that if he weren't in that debate, he'd be running instead of her. She got no votes. He got 14 million votes, and they threw him out of office. And you know what? I'll give you a little secret. He hates her. He can't stand her.
So not only name calling, but sowing division. You can see that he's like, oh, Joe Biden hates her because she took his spot and he was supposed to run. Like, first off, why would you insult the president like that? That sounds so terrible, and optically it just looks horrible. And on top of that, you want to sow division between these two candidates, or the VP and the president. That also doesn't look good.
And I'll tell you something, he's going to talk about immigration a lot tonight, even when it's not the subject that is being raised.
Yeah, for the most part, almost every subject was pivoted towards immigration. You know, the economy, immigration. Crime rates, immigration. Inflation, immigration. Immigration. And because of this behavior, it kind of gave the impression that Donald Trump is a one-trick pony.
And I will tell you, the one thing you will not hear him talk about is you.
And when I heard VP Harris say this, I was like, oh yeah, I haven't exactly heard Donald Trump refer to a group of people at all. And if he ever did refer to the people, it was always in contrast to the immigrants. But aside from Americans and immigrants, you know what's one group of people that no one really is capitalizing on? Not even Kamala Harris? The men. No one's talking to the men. Kamala Harris is talking to the women, and obviously, as you can see, a lot of women are voting for Kamala Harris, and they want to vote for Kamala Harris because what? Abortion is a big deal. But no one's talking to the men. And as you guys know, men aren't exactly doing well economically. They're not doing well financially. They're not doing well academically. They're not doing well in lifestyle. Men need to be talked to right now, and no one is talking to them. And it blows my mind that Donald Trump is not talking to these groups of people, especially because more men are heading towards the Republican side of the party, which indicates that these men are looking for somebody to represent them. And obviously the Democratic Party isn't going to do that, and Donald Trump doesn't exactly seem like he's interested in any of that. But yeah, that is a group of people that I think that one of these parties should capitalize on. There was a couple of standout moments that Trump did have that I want to show off.
This is the one that weaponized, not me. She weaponized. I probably took a bullet to the head because of the things that they say about me. They talk about democracy. I'm a threat to democracy. They're the threat to democracy
President
with a fake
Trump.
Russia investigation
We do have a lot
that went nowhere.
We have a lot to
Yeah, inflammatory statements are definitely a problem, and I'm glad that Trump brought it up. But the problem is that Trump, instead of proposing a solution, he fans the flames of an already wildfire that's spreading really fast. And this is the other standout moment that Donald Trump had.
As you know, many economists say that with tariffs at that level, costs are then passed on to the consumer. Vice President Harris has argued it'll mean higher prices on gas, food, clothing, medication, arguing it costs the typical family nearly $4,000 a year. Do you believe Americans can afford higher prices because of tariffs?
They're not going to have higher prices. What's going to have and who's going to have higher prices is China and all of the countries that have been ripping us off for years. I was the only president ever. China was paying us hundreds of billions of dollars, and so were other countries. And, you know, if she doesn't like them, they should have gone out and they should have immediately cut the tariffs. But those tariffs are there 3.5 years now under their administration.
Yeah, VP Harris, why is it that you guys still have the tariffs in place after 3.5 years? I mean, weren't you and President Joe Biden very critical about those tariffs? So I was very curious to see how she would respond.
President Harris, I do want to ask for your response, and you heard what the president said there, because the Biden administration did keep a number of the Trump tariffs in place. So how do you respond?
Well, let's be clear that the Trump administration resulted in a trade deficit, one of the highest we've ever seen in the history of America. He invited trade wars. You want to talk about his deal with China? What he ended up doing is, under Donald Trump's presidency, he ended up selling American chips to China to help them improve and modernize their military, basically sold us out, when a policy about China should be in making sure the United States of America wins the competition for the 21st century.
Well, but of course, I don't want to have to explain why I kept those tariffs in place. Instead, let's go ahead and pay attention to my opponent's oopsie. If you guys don't know, Trump ended up slapping China with tariffs. And of course, President Biden was very critical about these tariffs. But now he's actually building upon these tariffs, even though he was absolutely critical about these tariffs, even at one point saying Trump doesn't get the basics. He thinks his tariffs are being paid by China. Any freshman econ student can tell you that the American people are paying his tariffs. So just in case you guys don't know what a tariff is, essentially it's a tax on imported goods. And the firms, American firms, they have to pay those taxes. And guess what? Because they had to pay those taxes, the product becomes a bit more expensive. And so that is passed down to the consumer. So if these tariffs are affecting American consumers like you and I, and American businesses like Apple, Dell, Ford, General Motors, then why hasn't the president repealed these tariffs? Well, to tell you the truth, I don't know. I didn't do enough research into this because I'm not really trying to focus on tariffs. I'm trying to focus on the fact that Kamala Harris did not answer that question. She pivoted off to the oopsie and said, "Oh, well, look at Trump. He did this." Yeah, but overall, the whole debate, it just seemed like Kamala Harris was just a little more on top of her game. She was a lot sharper. Donald Trump, he just kept bringing up immigration over and over again. I'm surprised that he didn't talk about immigration when it came to tariffs, but for the most part, yeah, it seems like Kamala Harris performed really well. Overall, Kamala Harris, she came into this entire debate with a game plan. She executed and left looking optically well. Donald Trump, on the other hand, unfortunately, he seemed like he was cornered and was very predictable. He couldn't exactly bring forward the element of surprise. But hey, man, this is what happens when you just kind of wing it. So anyways, I'm going to go ahead and leave it there. That's all I have for you guys. And yeah, hopefully you guys learned something today.